Oh, I see new names. It's exciting.
Okay, we can start. Welcome to everyone. Happy New Year. Let's hope that this year indeed will be better for the entire world and in this case, particularly for Myanmar. I am very proud that we have been able to continue to monitor and discuss what is been happening in Myanmar, although it is sad that it's lasting so long. This is the 18th updates, bi-weekly update. We have tried with different resource persons to still continue to see what is happening. And today we have again Debbie Stothard, who, as you know already, she's a leading activist in the region concerned with Myanmar for many decades and about ASEAN more generally. Without further ado, I will give the word to her. She will present for about 20 minutes, and later on, as usual, we will open the floor. By the way, I am Leah Sciortino. I am the founder and director of SEA Junction, a public venue based in Bangkok. Debbie, please.
Hi, everybody, and wishing you all the guts and resilience and good fortune and determination to get through 2022. Well, for many of us, it was not a very good Christmas, except for the highlight that Leah and I actually got together face to face for a meal. So yes, we are real people. We actually met each other. But unfortunately, that was only one of the few highlights for this Christmas season for those of us who actually celebrated. Hang on, can you see the screen?
Not yet, you need to share.
Okay, hang on, sharing my screen now. All right. Let's go. So for many of us, Christmas, it was the worst Christmas ever. Seriously, for me, it was the worst Christmas ever. Why? Because you know how I've been jumping up and down, how I and also a whole bunch of other activists, both inside and outside Burma, have been warning so December is going to be a bad month. There's going to be more hostilities happening and more violence against civilians happening all around the country. Unfortunately, we were correct in our warnings. Not only did we see some of the worst human rights violations happening so far in 2021, we saw not just that that massacre in which several teenagers were amongst those killed and burnt alive in Sagaing region. This is what I was talking about at the last update. But then we saw an even more horrific situation happening, a similar incident taking place in Kaya, Karenni state on the east of the country on Christmas Eve, in which nearly 40 people, including women and children, were massacred. And these were all IDPs, people who had been already displaced by conflict. Let's not forget that more than half the population of Kaya state have been displaced because of violence. They were massacred as they were trying to move to a safer area, and amongst the two people who were killed were national staff of Save the Children, an INGO. We also saw Christian pastors arrested or abducted and killed in Chin State in the west. We continue to see a whole range of atrocities and murders happening as the military ramped up both ground troop movements in the east and the west of the country, but also airstrikes and using helicopter gunships and fighter jets And very close by on the Thai border, the ongoing attacks on Lek Kor, which actually saw people being abducted by the military troops. And to top it off, on the 23rd of December, we were subjected to this horrific photo of Cardinal Bo cutting a Christmas cake with junta leader and war criminal Min Aung Hlaing. And Leah, you encouraged me because you already told me this on Facebook, so I can say, what the fuck, Cardinal Bo? Don't you know what's going on in your country? How can you even hold his hand, let alone smile for a photo? Come on, this is absolutely unacceptable and tone deaf. We thought we can understand if he were to try and have a meeting with the junta leader to say, please dial back on the violence, stop killing people, stop attacking Christian churches. But, you know, this photo is going to be a scandal that our cardinal is going to have to live down. What were you doing when people were being murdered and subjected to crimes against humanity? Cutting a cake with the perpetrator. Not good, not good at all. Look, some of the most horrible things happened over December, especially in the second half of December, as most of us were away on our Christmas and end of year breaks. We've just edited the Burma Coup Watch covering the month of December yesterday. And it was very traumatizing to have to go through all of those accounts. I think I'm not going to talk too much in detail about that, but I would encourage you to go to www.ALTSEAN.org and download a copy of the Coup Watch for the month of December 2021. My colleagues worked very hard over the Christmas and New Year break to get it to you, and went through more than 500 reports to make that Coup Watch happen. So please have a look at it to get a sense of what's been going on. Now, I have not been so charitable to the National League for Democracy, the NLD, the party that won the 2020 November general election and were poised to apparently do a better job in their second term in office. I have been mainly focusing on the young movement, this new emerging leadership, on the ethnic groups who have always suffered from the worst end of the stick. But I wanted to actually look at what's been happening to some of the former office holders, the former senior public servants, and political leaders. So I'm going to have to acknowledge that basically the National League for Democracy and other political parties that previously won the election had been subjected to quite a serious blitz during the month of December. So we saw new charges laid against politicians at national level, as well as senior public servants, such as Dr. Tata Lin, the former National Immunization Director, she and as well as Dr. So Wu, the Director General of Public Health. Now, I have referred to Dr. Tata Lin before. She was subjected to a hunt. She was being hunted down immediately after the coup because she actually returned nearly $100,000 of grant money to an INGO. When the coup happened, because she was concerned that the illegal junta would take that money and use it for ill purposes. So she was subjected to a hunt They finally got hold of her. They charged her with treason. They took her husband, her 7-year-old son, and the family dog. And we still don't know what happened to the son, the husband, and the family dog. So now we have, and not just enforced disappearance of human beings, but also of the family pet. And this poor lady, already facing serious charges of treason, has also been charged with additional charges of corruption. We saw former region ministers in Bago, as well as directors general, subjected to fresh charges of corruption. In Megwe, we saw the region chief minister, Ong Monyo, charged for undue influence. That means he was using undue influence to support the NLD in their election campaign. 5 former Rakhine state ministers, including the chief minister Nipu, charged with corruption. And if that wasn't enough, Nipu and another colleague was also charged with violating the 2008 constitution. So this is what we know happened in December. But we also saw many cases where people were sentenced to jail. The lower house deputy speaker Tun Tun Hain was charged with 4 years was sentenced to 4 years with hard labor. Central committee members Dr. Myon Nyon, Hanta Mien, and Tain U sentenced 2 years for incitement. We saw leaders in Kachin state sentenced to between 1, 2, and 3 years of jail for various charges. The current state chief minister, Nankin Tue Mien. Okay, I know this lady. You know, when she was back 20 years ago, she was actually thrown in jail when she was on the way from Karen state, traveling to Rangoon for an NLD meeting, because the cops took her personal stuff without her permission. And when she asked for a legal justification, she was then dragged off to jail, and nobody realized she was already in jail for quite some time. She just didn't turn up for the meeting. Then she becomes eventually current state chief minister, and earlier last year was already sentenced to 75 years jail for various counts of corruption. Well, in December, she was also sentenced to a further 3 years in jail, as if 75 years jail is not enough. In Magwe, the chief minister was sentenced to 18 years for corruption. He was already sentenced. He was charged with more charges, but also sentenced. And we saw similar situations happening in Magwe, in Mandalay region, where people were sentenced to up to 12 years for corruption, but the Mandalay Regional Parliament Speaker Ong Chau was sentenced to 5 years for incitement and for violating COVID-19 restrictions. Yes, I think what was pretty horrific is that the Mandalay region NLD MP Luin Luin Mao was sentenced to 3 years under the Unlawful Association Act. He had originally been sentenced and was in jail since May, and then he was part of that group of people who were released in October, which gave people a lot of hope. But as he was being released at the prison gates, they arrested him again and then took him back to court, and then now they've sentenced him to additional 3 years. So this is the kind of stuff that was happening all of last year, but it got more intense during December. So I know I have not one, it has actually been quite horrific to talk about the atrocity crimes, to look at the summaries of atrocity crimes that happened in December, and I'm reluctant to talk too much about that because I don't want to traumatize you. And that's why I ask you, please read the Coup Watch, because you should read it and give yourself some time and space to digest the level of brutality and savagery that this illegal junta committed against the people of the country during the month of December. Now, the blitz that was aimed at wiping out the National League of Democracy before Min Aung Hlaing's newly reorganized and newly proposed August 2023 general election. So it's kind of interesting to see when you look at all those sentences, all those people have been sentenced to a minimum of 2 years, mainly so that they are not likely to be in circulation in time for the next general election. So Min Aung Hlaing is now saying, well, maybe we will have an election in August 2023, depending on the stability and security situation. So if Min Aung Hlaing is feeling insecure, as he often is, then we probably won't have an election. But what we've seen during December is that we've continued to see murders happening of NLD representatives, but also human rights defenders and civilians on the ground. So since the coup began, 573 NLD members have been arrested, of whom 432 remain in detention. 12 have died in custody, including 7 tortured to death during interrogation. And it's important to remember that one of the first NLD members who died in custody was actually a Muslim man. And I needed to note that because over the past few weeks, I was a little bit shocked to hear from at least one person that they were tired about hearing about what's going on in Burma, Myanmar, and simply that Burmese people deserved it because they treated Rohingya and Muslims so badly. And I'm saying, no, that's not what's happening. And that's the worst excuse possible to disregard what's going on in Burma. The people who inflicted genocidal attacks on Rohingya are the ones who are doing the same crimes, committing similar crimes to people in the rest of the country. Rohingya are still in the country and they've been subjected to all kinds of spurious charges and further persecution by the military. And what's more, many of the human rights defenders and dissidents who have been targeted, who have been murdered, tortured to death, and in one case, that notorious case of the young girl who was shot dead in her father's arms at home by soldiers raiding their house, these were all Muslim activists. So please get it out of your head that what is happening to people in Burma is somehow targeting only the main group. Everybody, all the people and all the communities that were traditionally marginalized are getting a worse time of it. They are actually getting worse persecution. So, and I'm focusing today on the NLD because I've kind of not talked about them very much. And I just wanted to note that on the 8th of December, Kin Ne Myo, the vice chair of the Lanmadon NLD office in Yangon, was shot dead in public. She was publicly assassinated. And on 13th of December, Te Tui Maung and his wife were taken by the junta in Mandalay. And the next thing you know, when relatives go and fight to try to find out if they are okay or not, they are told within 2 days of the arrest that both of them had already been cremated. Nobody actually knew that even died in custody. And they leave behind a 10-year-old son. So, you know, this has become such a normal development and a normal occurrence in Burma during 2021 that people get arrested and the next thing you know, not only have they died in custody, they've been cremated and nobody has a chance to even say their goodbyes to their loved ones. I wanted to note that you know, as of 30th December, we've seen more than 1,300 people killed by the military, more than 11,000 people arrested. This is, you know, when we talk about the thousands of people arrested and detained, I just want to note that the biggest number of political prisoners that we had on record in recent years was 3,000 in 1990. Okay, so and this was the crackdown after the military junta of the day lost the 1990 election, and the NLD won by a landslide, and there were calls for parliament to be convened. And this is why they had this huge crackdown, you know, more than 30 years ago. And now we're starting to see that that was pretty much almost a picnic when you consider that almost more than three times that number of political prisoners are now in Burma. In addition to what we've also started to see, and as I've not started to see, but what we continue to see, is that the military junta using military courts to crack down against dissent. And this is a common tactic, because in the military courts, civilian defendants, and this is a violation of international law, military courts should not be used against civilians. Civilians should be taken to civilian court. But these military courts have made it extremely difficult for defendants and civilians charged with crimes to get legal counsel, to have access to legal counsel to defend themselves, or even ask for evidence. And on the 19th of December in Mandalay, the junta forces arrested and disappeared 4 lawyers who had been trying to provide legal assistance to defendants in politically motivated cases. So in Mandalay, we don't see the problem we do see junta-controlled civilian courts, but we don't actually see military courts that we would see in Yangon, for example, where military courts operating in 6 Yangon townships under martial law had already sentenced 92 people to death, including 7 people sentenced to death in December. We saw in December junta control courts imposing prison sentences to 62 junta opponents, including politicians, activists, and artists. And just so that they can prevent and restrict the population from using the internet to access news, to donate money to the resistance forces, or to even distribute documentation of human rights abuses, the junta directed telecom companies to almost double the price of their data packages. So not only has there been a huge problem, including over the rising price of food and other necessary services, the junta actually told telecommunications companies to raise the price of their data packages to prevent the local population from accessing news and distributing human rights documentation or donating money to resistance forces. Now, PEN America on the 16th of December noted that 59 artists have suffered from serious human rights violations. 5 poets had been killed, 45 creative artists detained, and 9 in prison. But also we started to see, as a Christmas present to the world, this junta in this, and I'm being sarcastic. I know I don't mean Christmas present as in really, but this is just me being sarcastic. The junta sentenced actor Paing Takon and writer Tan Mien Aung to 3 years in prison on the 27th of December, and then 3 days later sentenced 4 actors to another 3 years for incitement because they publicly stood in solidarity with the movement against the coup. So, you know, we are basically facing a situation where no one is safe. No one is safe in Burma. And remember how I talked previously about the fact that the military was trying to get as many soldiers into combat duty as possible and were getting wives of soldiers to do non-combat duty. Well, in December, we got formal official confirmation that they are actually organizing military training for the wives and the children of soldiers. So both, basically, every family member of a soldier is potentially being subjected to military training so that they have to work for the army, not just the husband or the brother or the father. It's now become a different kind of forced labor, and this is in order to fill the gap by soldiers being killed, by putting soldiers into active combat, and to fill the gap created by soldiers and military and police defecting from the military. So we're coming into 2022 with a feeling of dread and anger and outrage over what has happened in December, but also understanding that the movement is still alive. All around the country, people continue to show their resistance, and they're not giving up as we head into the first anniversary of the coup. Thank you. And finally, we talked about Hun Sen, Mr. Cowboy Diplomacy. There's a campaign launched this week. He's supposed to be heading to Yangon on the 7th. And ASEAN Parliamentarians for Human Rights is leading the charge in terms of this campaign to tell Hun Sen to stay at home and to ask ASEAN to stop Hun Sen. He is we criticize the 5-point consensus, ASEAN's 5-point consensus, but and it's severely flawed. But Hun Sen, by going to Burma at this point, is going to totally destroy the 5-point consensus and create a horrific situation in ASEAN, because this is splitting ASEAN even as we talk. And if any of you are on Twitter or on social media, please make hashtag ASEAN Stop Hun Sen and hashtag Hun Sen Stay Home a trending hashtag. Time for us to stand in solidarity. There's over 261 local activist organizations who yesterday issued a very fiery statement via social media, basically saying Hun Sen is not welcome on the soil of Myanmar. And then there was a slightly more polite statement made by Myanmar civil society, Cambodian civil society, and international allies, of which ALTSEAN is one, basically saying, yeah, Hun Sen should stay home. So please add your voice to this campaign. There's crimes against humanity and other atrocity crimes happening in Burma, including ongoing crimes against the Rohingya. We really cannot afford this type of cowboy diplomacy to make matters worse. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Debbie, for this very comprehensive review. And I was very much interested in the new angle of looking what is happening with people from the NLD who indeed have also been taken prisoner and are now in prison. So thank you for the update. Now we have few questions. First, again on Cardinal Bo, but don't swear anymore. What are you explain? What explanation can be given for his behavior? if any? A second question is, there are news that China is helping ethnic militia to oppose the junta. These questions are from Tony. So is it what you know about this, China helping ethnic militia on the border with China or another part of the countries? Maybe we start with these two questions.
Okay, just because I was raised a Catholic does not mean that I can actually read the mind and the heart of Cardinal Bo. I'm so sorry. My question is the same as yours. What the hell was he thinking? Why did he do such a thing? And I really don't know. But he's feeling some pain for it because members of the Catholic community have come out in public to speak out against him, and this controversy has already been published in Catholic news services. So no one is actually moving to protect him for this action, and I think the Catholic Church needs to be very, very sensitive and respond with respect for communities that have been subjected to atrocity crimes, because the Catholic Church historically has been criticized for the poor way in which it responded to the Holocaust and other serious atrocity crimes that have happened historically. So I hope that Cardinal Bo will be able to seek forgiveness from the population who have been horrified by this incident. And what is China? Is China really helping ethnic militias on the border? I have no idea. As I said, I don't look at where the weapons come from or who has what weapons. You're going to have to ask another expert on that. But I can say that the China Red Cross has indeed been in ethnic border areas to administer COVID vaccine with the blessing of the Chinese government. So that definitely has happened and seems to continue to happen. But I don't know what kind of assistance is happening with ethnic militias. I can say historically, China was close to certain armed groups who were loyal to China, and that actually strengthened their bargaining position with the military in terms of previous ceasefire and peace talks. But yeah, I don't know what's happening now, seriously, and I'm kind of worried. I kind of don't want to know at this point.
We know that Debbie can be diplomatic on certain
issues. I'm just being honest. I don't know.
But there are suspicion, especially on the border area. But let's we have some other question. This is about. It looks like this is the comment that what is happening in Myanmar is like the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. Can it be seen as genocide? And then a second question: what has been the European community response to what is happening in December? Or is there been more because of all this violence in December? Has there been more action on the side of the international community? And then the last question: yesterday was Independence Day, right, in Myanmar. It seems not many people have celebrated such events. Is it any information on this?
Okay, thanks.
There
all right.
Questions.
Yes.
I will give you some time first to answer.
Okay. There have been arguments that what's happening in the country is genocide. I think we definitely know for sure that what's happening in the country amounts to crimes against humanity and war crimes. and there's a sound legal analysis and justification for that. I wouldn't go as so far as to call it genocide, except to say that one of the things that happened, developments that happened in December, is that the U.S. State Department has agreed that they will make a decision on whether what happened to the Rohingya in 2017 amounts to genocide. So there has been a huge push for a determination on genocide, which was officially led by the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. So I think it is going to be important that firstly, we need to recognize what happened to the Rohingya was indeed a genocide. And as a first step, and a second step, to recognize that denial of safety and protection of Rohingya civilians is prolonging and extending the impact of that genocide, which means that ASEAN countries hosting and sheltering Rohingya refugees and asylum seekers and stateless people need to be cognizant of their obligations. So that's one thing. The other thing too is that we do need to have a very sound legal determination that this illegal junta has committed crimes against humanity and war crimes. I think if we want to actually get a genocide determination, that requires more on-the-ground evidence and more comprehensive documentation, including getting evidence of intent to commit genocide against the broader population. Okay, so in December, the U.S. took some steps forward in terms of reorganizing how they handle the situation of Burma, and we're looking at whether that will move forward. Finally, the EU got a wake-up call with the Christmas massacre, and Joseph Borrell, the head of the EU, said that the EU stands ready to impose more sanctions, but did not say what those sanctions need to be. And let's be honest, if any of these countries want to make a difference and really want to put their money where their mouth is, including President Emmanuel Macron, who yesterday very generously tweeted his solidarity to the people of Burma on the occasion of their Independence Day, then they need to put their money where their mouth is. They need to impose sanctions on Myanmar oil and gas enterprise. Oil and gas revenues are the lifeline of this illegal junta. And if you are serious about supporting civilians on the ground, don't give them the ability to continue to earn foreign exchange to buy more weaponry. The military junta during the month of December was clearly suffering from a foreign exchange shortage. They started to print their more money, which means more inflation. When they engaged in gem bazaars, gem auctions, they were insisting that foreign buyers paid in US dollar or euro. And they're also talking about formalizing the renminbi as the mode of payment for business deals with China. They've started trying to revive very harmful development projects to try and get more foreign revenue. So I think we already know this junta is in economic trouble. As they impose more economic chaos on civilians and more violence on civilians, they themselves are hurting economically. So Macron, Biden, EU, MOG, sanction Myanmar oil and gas Stop the lifeline of this illegal junta if you're serious about it. And we want to see this happening very soon in 2022. None of these these little symbolic sanctions. No, no, that's not acceptable. That's not enough. It was the Independence. It was Independence Day for Burma yesterday. Usually, Independence Day events happen really early in the morning in Burma. So when foreigners say, "Oh, it's Independence Day," we'll go out and see the parade or whatever. Actually, they salute the flag. I don't know at 6 or 7, 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning when you're all fast asleep. So how Independence Day is celebrated in Burma is a little bit different. But what was interesting was seeing the artwork, this amazing artwork being shared on social media, this very vibrant artwork, and the understanding and the analysis and the messages put out by people in the movement that we didn't fight for independence to become slaves under the military junta. So this is a struggle now, not for independence, but against becoming slaves of an illegal junta. And I think that is something that we need to understand. This urgency and intensity of resistance is not about political, some type of political difference of siding one political party against another. This is a country, a population that understands what they're dealing with is the threat of being made slaves of the military for decades to come. And I think we also need to give the type of support and energy to this movement that to reflect that understanding. We are fighting slavery of our friends and family, of our brothers and sisters in Burma, and we cannot get tired of this fight. We cannot afford to suffer from Burma fatigue because this is a struggle that needs all hands on deck.
Okay, so we have the last round, but first a comment from Cecilia Brigli. I think an association wrote, one of her associates wrote to the Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Parolin, to strongly criticizing Cardinal Bo. And so I think Cardinal Bo thought to please the junta, but strangely, the photo is not in the new light of Myanmar. So this is a comment. Anyway, it's very important that the Vatican is also being put under pressure for what is happening with Cardinal Bo. From Galu, from AJAR, what are you hearing about violation by the PDF, and if there are, and what is NUG doing about this? Again, from Cecilia, do you think there will be election in 2023 as initially promised by the military? And don't you think that we should target also banks, insurance, reinsurance, and comprehensive economic sanctions that include government, as 183 associations are requesting? So beyond the petrol and etc. So this is the last round of questions for today.
Thank you. Yes, if you look at our various Coup Watch, monthly Coup Watch briefers, as well as the 7 thematic trackers that are updated every week or two, every fortnight, you will see that we do document human rights violations by PDF and militias who claim to be pro-democracy or claim to be anti-junta. Now, Firstly, we acknowledge that people have a right to self-defense, especially when the UN and ASEAN have done pretty much nothing to ensure civilian protection. So that's one thing we accept, that people do have a fundamental right to self-defense for their own survival, especially in this very harsh situation where they're being targeted with war crimes and crimes against humanity. But it also means that we expect the resistance forces to avoid committing human rights violations. And this is where the NUG came out very early with a code of conduct. And I think we also see People's Embrace, the movement that is encouraging military and police to defect to their cause. Also, there's a code of conduct. But the code of conduct cannot be, it's basically up to the PDFs and the militias to follow that code of conduct. What would strengthen the NUG's ability to enforce the code of conduct basically means the making sure that the NUG has the means to fund and train the PDF. And so this is actually quite an important question. And when I think in the last session, someone asked me how to get arms, how do we get arms to the PDF? I'm telling you, if you want to support a PDF that's more accountable and able to follow international humanitarian law, then you need to empower the NUG, and that means channeling funds for the PDF through the NUG. I'm saying this as someone who has not done so and will not provide money to the PDF knowingly. But, you know, in practical terms, we do need to ensure that the PDF and those militias are able to comply with international humanitarian law as they seek to defend the civilian population. You know, we have some very strange militias, including the bad guys with good hearts, basically gangsters who have decided to use their violent tendencies, to channel their violent tendencies against the military junta. Now, you know, there is, I think we do have an issue to address, and I don't think it's going to be us who can address it from the outside, which is, it's absolutely important in a post-coup situation that all those who carried arms are held accountable if they intentionally violated human rights, number one. And number two, that we are actually able to get these people back as active members of a peaceful society, because we really cannot afford to have hundreds of thousands of former combatants not willing to give up their guns and not willing to give up violence as a means of political resolution. So that is, we do need survival now, but we do need to think about how are we going to achieve a sustainable social transformation in the country if people are not willing to give up their weapons when the coup is ended. So I think this is the question that affects all of us in any conflict situation, whether we're in Aceh or West Papua or Timor-Leste or Sri Lanka or Southern Philippines. These are the questions that we need to continually ask and think about and see what we can do to support sustainable peace in the long term. So do I think there's going to be an election in August 2023? It depends on whether Min Aung Hlaing is feeling secure. Hopefully by August 2023, Min Aung Hlaing has been purged. Actually, by August 2022, it would be good if Min Aung Hlaing is purged by the military, because he has undermined the military's own ability to function economically and politically. And many people are starting to feel in the military that that the cost of trying to maintain power is too high. So we've started to see even family members of military officers, covering their faces, hiding their identities, but still holding up placards in social media to protest the coup. So, first item on the checklist, purge Min Aung Hlaing. Then open up discussions about how we're going to manage this transition, which includes a willingness to address the need for accountability on all sides for any serious human rights violations that have taken place. Comprehensive sanctions. Okay, this is what I was hoping to avoid, and I'm going to have to deal with it. 20 years ago, we were campaigning for comprehensive sanctions because the military had a tight control of the formal economy. Now, in the time between 2011 to 2021, there's been a transformation of the way the economy is run in Burma. It has seen the emergence of independent small and medium enterprises, which we don't want to kill off. But also, if we impose banking sanctions that do not just target military interests, but basically block out the whole country, it will be very difficult for us to continue sending our donations to our friends on the ground to keep them going. So there are very practical reasons why comprehensive sanctions is not in our interest. What we need to do is to keep on targeting sanctions that hurt the military and military economic interests directly. So I think we do need to pursue sanctions against Myanmar oil and gas enterprise, against other enterprises under the control of the military junta. We need to ensure that international financial institutions continue to freeze billions of dollars of loans and grants. There are billions of dollars of disbursements. Those are a huge amount of money that must not go in the hands of the military. We should be pushing IFIs who have that money to actually repurpose it for cross-border humanitarian aid. We need to give people on the ground a fighting chance to survive economically and to survive politically. And at this time, it does not appear that comprehensive sanctions will fulfill that purpose. That's not diplomatic. I'm just saying what I'm saying.
Yes, so I think there are many different views on this point, and will be important to continue discussing it. And we are lucky that Debbie has agreed to stay for a few more updates. Normally, we always change every 6 episodes at different speakers, but I kind of
Leah, you just pulled a coup against me just before we started this session.
Due to popular favor, I think we are going to have the pleasure to have still Debbie with us for a while longer. So we may continue this discussion, including monitoring of international organizations, because many of them are spending now money inside Myanmar for humanitarian purposes. But the question is whether this goes through the military or has to have the support of the military or not. So in that sense, will also be important to monitor. I think even within the union, the Myanmar union, there are different point of views among some more senior leader and other younger cadre, and also depending on the sector on whether to have targeted comprehensive sanctions. So it will be important to discuss in more detail, including on many other topics. ALTSEAN, whether it really goes or not, will be in the next episode in 2 weeks' time. So we hope to see you all again in 2 weeks' time. I also want to say for those in Bangkok, we will have 2 exhibitions going on. One, again, the exhibition on women on the streets is going to move to the FCCT, the Foreign Correspondents Club, and there will be a fundraising night for journalists of Myanmar on the 24th with composition, with poems, music, and food of Myanmar, and of course the launch of the exhibition. And we will have another exhibition of BACC discussing the entire 1 year of the coup through art pieces in collaboration with Raising Three Fingers. But we are not going to use this name since it is sensitive in Thailand too, the three-finger salute. But it is in collaboration with artists, various artists. So will be just kind of an overview of what has been happening in Myanmar through arts work. So please do come. We'll open on the 18th if we manage to install it, because it's technically a little bit complex. But hopefully we will manage to do so. So please put in your calendar 18th of January for the art exhibition, and the 24th, the launch of the photo exhibition at FCCT. Once more, thank you very much, Debbie.
Thank you, Leah, and thank you everyone for joining.
Yes, and for staying with us. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. See you in 2 weeks. If we don't see you hope to see you on the 24th. You know, journalists have been in Burma, have been heroic in doing their work, and they've been so heavily targeted. So they deserve every bit of support. So take care, everybody. Hope to see you on the 24th.
Actually, the exhibition is very powerful. Was about women. Already we held it here at FBCC with great success. So it is worth watching it again.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Both. See you. Oh, both the journalists, the women, and the next update. 3.
Okay.
See ya.
3. Bye.
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 Bye.